dangerous and cunning enemies of China. He has accepted the challenge of a lifelong dream.
You gotta be kidding me. There's one more of them!
The tales of Po, the Dragon Master, continue to be told about how he defeated China's most dangerous and cunning enemies. With that, he became the most popular hero of his time, so much so that he has his own Happy Lunch toy and is loved by the Emperor. And above all that, he has won the Employee of the Month at his dad's noodle shop 7 years in a row. And now, after adorning his cap with many feathers of achievements, he has accepted a challenge of a lifetime, a food tour of China. Po boisterously sings praises of himself, and his dad mollycoddles him by saying he deserves it. He wants Po to try out food from all over China, so he realizes his dad is the best among all the other chefs. So, Po embarks on his journey and gets recognized and greeted everywhere he goes. Finally, he arrives at a village that is the home of a powerful Wugao gauntlet and is immediately surrounded by his devoted fans. But Po wants to eat and requests the restaurant owner to let him in as the crowd follows him. Initially reluctant and fearing for the safety of her restaurant, the owner allows him to come in. Po thanks her and quickly makes his way in, but she makes him wait in the closet. Unbeknownst to anyone, two weasels, Klaus and Veruca, are planning something, and as soon as Po goes inside the restaurant, the weasels get into action. They run over the roofs making the houses tremble, and when they pass over the restaurant's top, the vibration locks the closet door, locking Po inside. Suddenly Po hears the commotion outside and tries to get out, but finding the door locked, he starts calling out to the restaurant owner, but she dismisses him thinking he's getting impatient for food. Meanwhile, the weasels tackle the guards of the gauntlet but soon get caught in a net. The guards breathed a sigh of relief that they could prevent them from stealing their precious gauntlet. Just then, Po gets ready to break the door open, and as he does, the restaurant owner suddenly opens the door, making Po lose his balance and he breaks through the wall sending several barrels flying in the air. One of the barrels hits the gauntlet and the other the lever, which opens the net and releases the perpetrators. Though the guards quickly take action and surround the weasels, but when the gauntlet lands in one of the weasels' hands, the guards back down, fearing the unimaginable powers it wields. Their attempt is intercepted by Po, who snatches the gauntlet and accidentally wears it as he's bounced off the net into the air. But when he lands, he uses the hand he's wearing the gauntlet in to reduce the impact of the fall. The gauntlet starts glowing, and as soon as it touches the ground, it sends a powerful energy force and throws off everybody several feet behind. When Po opens his eyes, he sees a crater with glowing green cracks, and nobody is visible. He looks at the glowing gauntlet and immediately takes it off, only for it to be stolen by the weasels again. Po manages to pull off the thumb of the gauntlet, but the weasels take the rest. Po also notices a mysterious figure on the roof, staring at him before disappearing. Po chases the three, and an epic fight ensues. Po and the weasels fall off into the gorge with the trolley as the ropes get cut off in the fight. The mysterious figure somehow saves themselves by clinging to the edge of the cliff. Po fights the weasels on a moving cart but ultimately loses them and the gauntlet when the cart wheels towards the edge and into the water along with Po. When Po returns to the village empty-handed, everyone gives him the cold shoulder as they blame him for their village being destroyed and their Wugao gauntlet being stolen. With a heavy heart, Po returns to his village. The news travels fast, and nobody greets him as he passes through their villages. Worst of all, he comes to know that the Emperor has revoked his title of Dragon Master. But seeing his Happy Lunch toys being returned pulls the last straw for Po, and he sulks in his bowl of noodles. Just then, the mysterious bear appears, leading to another fight between the bear and Po. But Po is no match for the bear, and he soon gets overpowered. The bear removes her helmet and reveals that she is a knight. She introduces herself as Luthra of Landreth, the Wandering Blade, daughter of the Saxon Guard, and Knight of England, and she is looking for the Dragon Master. She is surprised to learn that it is Po and criticizes him for letting the weasels escape even though she tried to stop them. The weasels are high-profile criminals of England and had come to China to locate the very weapon Po let them take. Luthra says she needs to stop them and plans to leave, and Po seizes the opportunity and asks to tag along. If they successfully retrieve the gauntlet, Po will regain his lost glory, so he convinces her to take him along. Po also shows her the gauntlet's thumb that he was able to snatch before those criminals took away the gauntlet, but it gets stuck on Po's thumb. Luthra finally agrees to take Po along and says they'll leave early morning. Po zealously packs his bag and is too excited to sleep, and when finally it is morning, he runs outside to find Luthra, but realizes she has left without him. Nevertheless, he is determined to restore his lost reputation and decides to go alone. Klaus and Veruca make their way through the jungle when they are surrounded by lizard foes, but Veruca takes care of their entire army with just one punch wearing the gauntlet. Meanwhile, Po starts his journey and, along the way, tries calling out to Luthra by various names except for her actual name. He finally spots her after some time, but instead of running to her, he is dragged, stomped, tripped, and smacked across the rocks and grass as the gauntlet thumb glows and pulls him towards something. But it stops working as soon as he reaches Luthra. Po's persistence makes Luthra finally give in, and he tags along with her. After an entire day of traveling, they stop to eat, and Luthra eats her tasteless bread. Seeing her eat such bland food, Po gives her some of his dad's chili paste to enhance the taste, but Luthra ends up coughing and crying because it is too spicy for her to handle. She thinks Po poisoned her, and she attacks him, but Po is quick on his feet, and he saves himself by climbing a tree. After Luthra feels better, they both sit under the tree, and Luthra tells her what a knighthood means. She also tells him that Klaus and Veruca belong to an ill-intentioned sect of mages. For hundreds of years, they have used their dark powers to manipulate their way into society. Only recently, the knights discovered their plans and banished them from England. They had made an attempt on the queen's life, but the queen survived, and Veruca was captured. But not long after, Klaus freed his sister from captivity, and they fled to China to get their hands on the gauntlet to use its power to tear down England's defenses. So she says she can't wait and starts walking. Po also catches up and shows her the way to the lava river, but to their dismay, the only bridge has been cut down. They soon find a similar glowing green crate on the river's other side, which signifies they are on the right track. Just then, Po accidentally drops Luthra's helmet in the lava river as he was juggling it, making Luthra upset. She blames Po for delaying her and asks him to go home. But Po isn't going to give up that easily, and he stands by the river, meditating. He calms himself and collects the energy from his surroundings till he feels one with it, and then before Luthra could do anything, Po jumps into the river but lands on a rock. He slowly starts crossing the river by tiptoeing on the rocks and, in no time, makes it to the other side only to find his toe is on fire. Luthra is impressed but refrains from saying anything. Po then throws a rope to her end, which she ties to a tree trunk. Po assures her that he'll hold the other end as she balances herself and walks on the rope to make it to the other side. She notices the lizards behind Po and warns him, but when Chuntao shows up, Po is surprised to see him. The lizards are quick to take a jibe at Po for the recent events. Luthra is confused and asks Po if these lizards are his friends. Po explains that he had to put Chuntao in jail a few years ago because he had hijacked the old emperor's new wagon to impress a girl. As soon as the topic of his girlfriend arises, Chuntao sighs and, in a melodramatic way, leans onto the rope to tell Po that they broke up. Just then, he sees the shining sword on Luthra and asks for it as their fee. The lizards suddenly attack Po, and Po uses the edge of the rope to tackle them. Two of them slither on the rope and attack Luthra. She fights them back, but soon all the lizards climb on the rope, making it dip toward the lava. Po starts to lose grip, but Luthra boosts him up and says he is strong enough to hold on. Po uses his strength to wiggle the rope to flick away the lizards, and Luthra makes it to the other side just before the rope snaps, and the lizards follow. Po and Luthra run to save themselves, and the lizards chase them. The ones who fell into the lava use their iron tails to slide on the lava and catch up with Luthra and Po. And before they know it, Chuntao steals Luthra's sword, and she loses her confidence, as the sword was supposed to protect her. Now it is Po's turn to encourage her, and he convinces her to fight like a team. Together they start taking down lizards one by one until many attack them all at once and throw them toward the lava river. As they are falling, Po pushes Luthra so she can reach safely on the land. While he's still falling, he controls his chi and uses it to make his body lighter and gain better control over his movements. Very impressively, he tackles all the lizards one by one till he reaches Chuntao and hurls him into the sky. He successfully retrieves the sword, and Luthra admits she is impressed by him. As he presents her with the sword, the gauntlet thumb activates and starts dragging Po. It points to a place ahead from where great pressure of energy is released. Po surmises that the thumb activates whenever the gauntlet is used. Now that they know its location, they prepare to reach the place and arrest the weasel siblings before they do any more damage.
Seems like the former Dragon Master has a new job.
Po, we need to leave, now.
The episode opens with a hedgehog, Zhen, writing a scroll, but she's too tired to write anymore, so her superior asks her to keep the scroll in the library before she leaves. Zhen climbs on a very long bamboo pole which catapults her to a huge rock with many indentations for the safekeeping of the scroll. As she is done safely placing the scroll, she notices Veruca and Klaus stealing a scroll. Veruca, however, is not done yet, and she uses the gauntlet to create a wave in the ground to see the huge rocks fall like dominoes. Just as she uses the gauntlet, Poe's thumbpiece glows and starts pulling him toward the gauntlet. With Luthra, Poe makes his way to the village and sees the same mark in a crater as in all other places where the gauntlet was used. Suddenly everything starts falling, and without wasting any time, Poe starts rescuing all the hedgehogs. When one of the rocks starts falling, Luthra uses the bamboo sticks to create a stalwart to prevent it from falling, consequently saving the scrolls. The hedgehogs cheer, and the elder hedgehog introduces himself as Huang. He tells them that they are the monks and keepers of these scrolls that hold the history of China. They regard Poe as Grand Master even when he tells them his title was revoked, and even show him the scrolls that sing praises of his valor and now have become part of the Chinese legacy. Luthra asks them if they know who destroyed their village, and Huang tells them they've caught the culprit. He takes them to the prison cell built on the top of the rock, requiring them to be catapulted from the ground. The process is particularly difficult for Poe as he lands on Luthra and has a spinning head for a few seconds. The hedgehogs then unveil a crate that has Zhen in it. Huang suspects her of setting fireworks and destroying everything, but Zhen says she didn't do it. Luthra sides with Zhen and asserts they've caught the wrong person, but she can't do anything about it as the monks are not ready to listen to her side of the story. Once Huang leaves and they are alone with Zhen, she tells them she saw the weasels and the glowing glove, but she promises to tell them everything only if they help her escape. Poe is reluctant because this is the only village that still considers him the Dragon Master and respects him, and he doesn't want to jeopardize that. Luthra reminds him that being a knight includes making difficult choices between the lesser of the two evils. Poe finally agrees, and the two plan to free Zhen from the cell at night. After several failed attempts at using the bamboo stick and reminding himself that he is the giant pole thingy, he finally manages to get to the high rock vault, but not before smashing his face on the rock's surface. After Poe is unable to pick the lock of the crate, Zhen advises him to carry the crate so they can get her out later, but when the guards see Poe carrying their prisoner, Poe lies that he is going to deliver the prisoner to the Imperial Guards himself. He builds a story about Huang's birthday, but when logic fails him, he escapes using childish tactics, which surprisingly works. As luck would have it, the Imperial Guards arrive at the same time as Poe is escaping. Just as the guards try taking away Zhen, Luthra challenges them and fights them single-handedly till she is overpowered. Once surrounded, she is about to get attacked when Poe intervenes. He says he doesn't want to hurt them, but when the guards don't stop, Poe uses kung fu to subdue them while constantly apologizing. Luthra soon joins, and together they defeat the Imperial Guards and take Zhen with them. Once they've reached a safe distance, they ask Zhen to tell them everything. Zhen tells them that the Weasel siblings stole the scroll of the Tianshan weapons. She explains it with a story that dates back to when the world was one single landmass, Pangaea. The people who lived back then had great powers as they could control the elements, but everything changed when a group of people wanted to rule Pangaea with an iron fist. To stop them, a team of elemental warriors banded together, and they used their powers to create 4 weapons that could trap those evil beings. But when they trapped those beings, the elements were thrown off balance, and the world split apart. Zhen then describes the weapons: a helmet, a gauntlet, a fire whip thingy, and one other thing she can't remember. She warns that these weapons are dangerous on their own but would cause havoc if used together. Luthra speculates the weasels are collecting all, but they have to put a stop to their racing thoughts as Huang and the Imperial Guards arrive looking for them. They need to leave, so Zhen uses fireworks to distract them and runs away. Luthra starts running and calls out to Poe, who feels bad for betraying the only people who still trusted him, and he reluctantly follows her. As they are planning their next move, Poe can't help but think that he has heard about the fire whip somewhere and remembers the comic he is reading mentions the whip. He quickly takes it out and starts reading to get a clue about its possible location, and just as he is about to get to the part that mentions the location, the book ends with a "to be continued" message, and so does the episode. The episode begins with the Imperial Guards meeting the Emperor to report that they were ambushed by Poe, who helped their prisoner escape. They show their disability to fight the mighty warrior Poe, but the Emperor has a solution hidden up his sleeve. So, he pulls up his sleeve and reveals a gong announcing that they'll be taking the help of the Forbidden Company as he strikes the gong with a hammer. The proclamation sends shivers down the spine of the guards and the worker present in the palace. Just then, with a hissing sound, 4 Komodo dragons appear in front of the Emperor. The Emperor orders them to bring in the former Dragon Master Poe. Before they leave, the Emperor asks them to display their toxic spit power, much to the janitor's dismay. Meanwhile, Poe and Luthra argue about Poe's conviction that his graphic novel will help them find the fire whip. Poe asserts that the author of the novel is a great history fanatic and has clearly based the whip on one of the Tianshang weapons, and they just need the final issue to find where the whip is hidden. But there is a problem, the final issue hasn't been released yet. So Poe proposes they meet the author and make their way to a fair that looks like a mix of Renaissance Fair and Comic Con, which is a dream come true for Poe as he is a hardcore fan. But his dream comes shattering when he sees a wanted poster of himself stuck on every wall and even the roof. Luthra advises him to wait for her at the entrance while she goes to talk to the author, but Poe doesn't want to miss the fair, so he disguises himself as Master Bamboozle, whose entire costume is made with bamboo. Luthra lets him tag along and warns him to keep a low profile. They reach the author's workshop, but are met with the bad news that the author passed away 3 months ago. Poe is getting over the shock when he is splattered with water from a hose by the late author's son, Lao, who thinks Poe is one of the crazy fans. Poe tries to explain why he's there, but Lao brushes him off, inadvertently admitting the final issue of the novel still lies in the workshop. Without wasting any more time, Luthra makes her way in, and Poe follows, but they get caught by Lao. Frustrated by such behavior, Lao uses a crossbow to sound the alarm. Meanwhile, the Forbidden Company is hot on Poe's trail and is just on the outskirts of the fair when they hear the alarm. Poe tries to explain his situation, but when Lao is not ready to listen, so Poe grabs the novel and gets into a scuffle with Lao. Lao manages to save the book from burning and reveals he used to read the first draft with his father, but now that he is no more, he hasn't read the book because he is not ready for it to be over. He pleads with them to get out. Luthra feels bad for Lao and draws her sword out, telling Lao that the sword belonged to her brother. Now, it is the only thing she has left of him. She didn't wield the sword for many years because using it would mean accepting that he wasn't coming back. But she realized the sword's purpose was to defend the helpless, the way her brother did. She tries to make him understand that books are meant to be read. She continues by saying that his father has written something in the book that might save the world. Lao understands and offers to read the book with her, but asks Poe to stay away. Lao starts reading, and it mentions that the whip is kept guarded in secret Lost City. Lao recognizes it on the map as his father used to take him to those mountains on holidays. He gives the map to Luthra and Poe and decides to share his dad's last novel with the people to honor his work. As Poe and Luthra are leaving, Poe says he is happy they are becoming friends, but Luthra doesn't share the same sentiments. She tells Poe that she was 8 years old when Klaus and Veruca eliminated her brother because he was trying to arrest them. She is finishing what her brother could not. So she clears it that she can't be his friend because if she ever has to choose between him and the mission, she would always choose the latter. Just then, the Forbidden Company surrounds Poe and Luthra, and a fight ensues between the two groups. The Forbidden Company doesn't shy away from using their toxic spit, putting the civilians' lives in danger. Poe and Luthra have a hard time keeping up with them, and finally, Poe gets captured. They leave an injured Luthra alone and take Poe with them. As Poe is dragged away, he looks at Luthra with anticipation, but she picks up the map they had lost during the fight and starts walking the other way, making it clear the mission is more important to her.
Sorry, bud. Can't let you run off on me again.
Poe, there's a deadly sandstorm in front of us and a person behind us who wants to kill us.
I'm wondering if you could help me find an old friend.
The episode opens with Poe blabbering about Luthra's betrayal while the kimono dragons give it their all to push Poe into the iron cage. Suddenly, the dragons get attacked and get taken down one by one. Poe cheers as he thinks it is Luthra, but stops when he sees a mysterious cloaked figure with one eye. Meanwhile, on her way, Luthra contemplates whether she made the correct decision, and after grilling her brain, she decides to concentrate on capturing the weasels. Just then, she senses someone following her, and as she gets ready to strike, she stops when she sees a little girl who has followed her from the fair. The little girl explains since Luthra saved her, now it is her turn to do the same, and once she's successful in her mission, she'll return home. But Luthra urges her to go back as it can be dangerous to accompany her. Since the little girl's house is in the same direction as Luthra is going, she tags along with the wandering blade. Somewhere in the desert, Klaus and Veruca are huffing and panting as they have been walking for quite some time in search of the city that has the whip of endless flame. They are tired and thirsty and have been going in circles for days, which has made them grumpy, and they soon get into a verbal spat. A sandstorm approaches right in time to break their fight and make them run for their lives. While in the jungle, the mysterious entity ties the Forbidden Company and threatens them with his blade before approaching Poe. Poe stumbles as he gets scared and inadvertently pushes his cage and wheels downhill toward a cliff. Poe uses his strength to put a brake on the cage by shifting his weight backward, and he successfully stops the cage at the edge of the cliff, only for the edge to break and take the entire thing down with him. Po screams and keeps screaming for quite some time before realizing he didn't fall from that great of a height, and lucky for him, his cage also breaks apart, setting him free. Po straightens his back and timidly calls out to the mysterious cloaked person, but when no one comes, he gains his confidence and declares nobody can tell him what to do. He starts having a full-fledged conversation with himself while imitating Luthra as he takes the nearby path, unaware that the mysterious cloaked man was watching him all this while. Walking on the same path, the little girl asks Luthra where her friend is, to which Luthra hesitatingly says Po wasn't his friend. She tries giving her some adult advice, but the little guild is lost in her own world, and points at the spice market not far from there. Luthra looks at the map and realizes they are very near to the gateway of the desert. Luthra smiles as the child says she is going to save her from any danger, and finally, she plays along, asking the little girl to escort her to the market, and from there, she makes the girl promise to go back home. Walking through the jungle, Po raps about his journey when something jumps on him, but Po tackles him and realizes it is Wayman, one of the kimono dragons from the Forbidden Company. Wayman pleads with Po not to hurt him and dramatically cries that he is going to get fired, but Po couldn't care less because they tried to arrest him twice. Wayman apologizes for that and proposes he'll help Po regain his Dragon Master title while, in doing so, proving to others that he can be taken seriously. Po gives him a chance, and they make their way to the desert. Luthra and the little girl reach the spice market, and Luthra asks her to go home, which she gladly obliges. The weasels are not far behind as they cough up sand after surviving the sandstorm. They spot the spice market and excitedly run toward it. Meanwhile, Wayman carries Po on his back through the forest and drops him when he sees the spice market. They soon reach the market, and Po treats Wayman to a bowl of noodles, but Wayman turns out to be a traitor as he handcuffs Po to the noodle stall and declares he'll take Po to the Emperor all by himself. Po is furious at this betrayal and lifts the entire noodle stand to swing at Wayman, knocking him out because no one betrays Po over noodles. Simultaneously, the weasels attract attention when Veruca knife strikes Klaus in the throat and calls out to everyone saying her brother is choking. As everybody gathers to help, Veruca steals the vendor's money. The commotion attracts Luthra's attention, and she recognizes the weasels. She is determined not to let them leave this time and chases them. Just as she is running, she realizes Po, with a cart, is running parallel to her. He clarifies that he needs to catch those thieves to clear his name. They chase the weasels together till Wayman obstructs them, and Luthra uses her sword to cut Po's cuffs, sending Wayman crashing onto a pillar, obstructing Veruca, as Klaus escapes. Luthra points her sword at Veruca and asks her if she remembers her. After thinking a little, Veruca remembers she's the same little girl whose brother they eliminated. But before Luthra could strike, Veruca saves herself with the help of the gauntlet and escapes. Luthra and Po's woes don't end there as the mysterious cloaked entity appears out of nowhere and uses his specialized gun to shoot ropes at Luthra and Po, trapping them. He is about to strike them, but Luthra reaches for her sword and cuts her ropes. She then tackles the mysterious entity to ward him off for a few seconds so she can free Po, and they both run. Po is happy they are together and realizes he doesn't want a yes man like Wayman but a true friend like Luthra, who pushes him to do his best. They soon find themselves trapped between a sandstorm and a man who wants to eliminate them. Since they are a unit again, they are ready to take on any challenges. Just as the mysterious man is about to trap them with ropes again, a wooden sword appears beneath Po and Luthra that makes them drop into an underground tunnel. The little girl from before laughs and says now her life debt is repaid. Luthra is surprised to see her, and so is Po, who asks Luthra if she kidnapped the girl. They soon realize they are in the little girl's home, and she shows them the way out. Luthra thanks the girl for saving them and making her realize she can't do everything alone. So Luthra gives the map to Po, which makes him squeal in happiness. Po thanks the little girl for mending their relationship and starts their venture to find the lost city. The little girl reunites with her parents when the mysterious entity appears behind them. It is a reindeer who takes out his blades from the cloak to place them back as his antlers and asks the family if they could help him find an old friend. In a flashback, Alfie, Luthra's brother, is blindfolded and in the middle of a dangerous training session when he hears Luthra calling. He loses his concentration and ends up getting smacked by a bundle of logs that he was supposed to dodge. He runs to Luthra, who trips on her dress and calls it stupid. She says she doesn't want to be in a castle but wants to become a knight and wield a sword, just like her brother. Alfie loving caresses Luthra's head, and says their parents will never allow her to choose that path as it is too dangerous. Luthra is reminded of this incident while crossing the desert when a sandball lands on her. It is Po who challenges her to a sand fight. Luthra is not at all happy and warns him to do it again as she paints a gruesome picture of what she'll do to him. Po quickly throws away the sand seeing Luthra grumpy, but he doesn't lose hope and keeps his spirit high. Meanwhile, the reindeer threatens the little child to tell him where the two bears are headed, but when he gets why as a reply to everything he asks, he ties up her parents and then asks again. The little girl's dad pleads with her to tell the reindeer, so she draws a map for him and says it'll take him to the place Poe and Luthra are going. Poe and Luthra have been walking the entire afternoon and are tired, but against Poe's request, Luthra is not willing to rest. She says they are no match for the gauntlet's power and only stand a chance at winning if they find the whip of fire before Klaus and Veruca. We're again taken into Luthra's childhood, where Luthra is pleading with Alfie to train her. So to engage her, Alfie gives her a task to fetch 2 pails of water from the well without touching them. Luthra thinks before trying various ways to fulfill the task. First, she tries to balance them on either edge of a bamboo stick, but she loses balance and falls. Then she catapults the pail, using ropes tied for hanging clothes, but it almost hits Alfie. After many tries, she is frustrated, but Alfie encourages her by telling her that many knights older than her have failed at this juncture, but Luthra refuses to fail. Back at present, Luthra and Poe are tired and thirsty, but their faces light up when they spot an agave plant. They immediately quench their thirst from its leaves, and Poe uses it as a makeshift slide board for an easier commute, while Luthra refuses to do so. She stumbles down from one of the dunes and lands on her back when she sees vultures flying overhead. She warns them not to even think about eating them, and vultures play it cool. The sun is about to set, and the reindeer is following Poe and Luthra's trail. The weasel siblings are tailing him because they know this is the best way to get to the whip of fire. Luthra and Poe rest for the night, and in her dream, Luthra sees the time she solves the challenge by asking a passerby to carry the 2 pails of water for which he'll get a gold coin. The passerby gladly does as asked, and Alfie ends up paying the gold coin, amazed at his sister's wit. However, Alfie says she has one more challenge to undergo. It is the next day, and Poe and Luthra struggle to find the city. Just then, Poe's repetition of the words of wisdom told to him by his masters helps them find an oasis. They wonder if the city is gone, and this is all left of it. As they are walking, a huge rock rumbles, and suddenly an enormous rock monster wakes up. It attacks Poe, and Luthra tries to save him. Somewhere in the desert, the reindeer has joined hands with the weasels after he catches them following him, and they strike a deal with him. While fighting the rock monster, Poe realizes that the monster is perhaps the city. He quickly jumps into the monster's mouth and takes the leap of faith to find out. Luthra panics and tries to keep the monster's mouth open for Poe to come back. As she struggles, we are taken into a flashback, where Luthra is scared as her last challenge is to get herself out of a dark well. Luthra thinks she can't do it, but Alfie encourages her, and Luthra realizes some of the stones in the wall of the well are lost. She pulls them out just enough for her to hold onto and climb with their help, and she manages to pull herself out. At present, Luthra hears Poe's words that obstacle is the path, and for the first time, she is willing to do things Poe's way. She let go of the monster's mouth and jumps in. They land in a water body and find an entire abandoned city inside the monster. Poe soon spots the whip in a stone statue's mouth, and Luthra is about to grab it, but Poe stops her. He warns her that if she takes it, the protection system will activate, and the bows will come flying at them, and probably the floor will crumble from under their feet, so they have to make a run for it. Luthra asks him how he knows all this, and Poe answers it is standard treasure-grabbing protocol. With great suspense, Luthra grabs the whip, but nothing happens. They are surprised there are no traps, but just then, a laughing monkey appears from behind the statue and says there are no traps but much worse than that, him.